Hi, everyone. We have a lot to cover, so I think we are going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you to the 2017 IABG Policy Agenda. My name is Lucy Milani. I help lead the Financial Empowerment Policy Project at Heartland Alliance, which includes coordination of our statewide asset building coalition, IABG. We're really excited to share with you today our 2017 policy agenda, which many of you have contributed to through feedback in our community partner survey, engagements in our 2016 partner convening back in October, and then via a number of tables that many of our partners sit at and engage with. And so we really appreciate your feedback and are excited to chat with you about what we anticipate as some of the key policies we'll be working to advance as well as defend in Illinois and federally. And again, thank you for that feedback. So just quickly, a few housekeeping rules before we jump into the agenda. As an FYI, the webinar is being recorded. We will send out the slides and the webinar after the conclusion. You'll probably receive it tomorrow. In addition, we will send out a separate email that includes additional links and documents that we have talked about during the event. I'm just seeing that you guys may not be able to see my slides, so one second. So, sorry guys, if you could just hold on one second. Okay, hopefully you can see the slides now. I understand you were seeing my beautiful cat, so aren't you guys looking? So back to housekeeping. I'm just waiting for confirmation that you guys can see the slides now. One second. Jody, if you could just confirm that people can see the slides.
Hey, Lucy, I believe we can see the slides. We're seeing the PowerPoint, but it's not really loaded up to the housekeeping one. It looks like it may not be in viewing mode. Yeah.
Okay, are you able to see the housekeeping now? Jody?
No, so we're looking. There we go. Yep, we've got it. Thanks.
Great. So I apologize if there's additional technical issues. Please let me know, Jody. So you guys are muted during the call. If there are any issues, like right now, please let us know via the chat box. When we get to the Q&A, you can raise your hand via the GoToMeeting control panel, and we will unmute you, or else you can put your question in the chat box. Okay, so you should be seeing the IABG slide. For those of you who are maybe new to IABG, we are a statewide coalition made up of practitioners, advocates, researchers, and some small financial institutions around the state that is really fighting for policies and programs that help families build financial security and close the racial wealth gap. So our policy agenda broadly really looks at what policies can we put in place to make it easier for low-income families and families of color to save, both for emergencies and long-term. And we also look at what programs and practices are in place, either government policies or policies perpetuated by financial services and institutions that really trap families in a cycle of debt and really strip wealth from our communities. So today we're going to dive a lot deeper into some of the broad issues that you see here. And a quick overview of the agenda. First, we're going to discuss our federal policy agenda, which is very much defensive this year. Sam Tuttle, our Director of Policy at Heartland Alliance, is going to give an update on the state budget. And then Jody and I, Jody Blaylock, who works with me on financial empowerment policy here at Heartland and at IABG, we're going to talk through the state legislative agenda for this year, and then we'll turn it over for Q&A. So briefly, I think with the federal policy agenda, we, as with other fields, there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen. And we are working with our national partners to really get ready to think through how do we defend the progress that we've made over the last few years that has really had a significant impact on our asset building work and financial empowerment work. So one of the big pieces is potential threats to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Many of you have worked with the CFPB, either in trying to resolve issues that your program participants have had with abusive financial products, or you have partnered with us and with them from their with their financial empowerment office through their, doing financial education in the community. We've really benefited and hope to benefit in the future from some of the rules that the CFPB have addressed over the last 5 years. But we understand that, you know, there's already been a lot of threats on the CFPB, and since Dodd-Frank 5 years ago, continued efforts to try to strip their powers, and we're going to see this really increase, and have already seen a lot of discussion about that. So the concern with the CFPB is that a number of their powers, their enforcement and rulemaking powers, will be stripped. The structure that they receive funding will be changed, really limiting their funding and making the organization, the Bureau, significantly smaller, and changing the leadership structure. So changing from a director, currently Director Cordray, to changing to more of a committee, which again would weaken their powers. Another big area that we're paying attention to is cuts to existing asset building programs that this field has been fighting for decades now. So this includes Assets for Independence, which many of you know is where the federal IDA, Individual Development Account program, is held, and then the VITA grant program, which funds a number of free tax preparation programs in Illinois, and we believe both are under threat. And then finally, we're keeping an eye on tax policy changes. You know, we've probably heard a lot of discussion about tax, different tax policy agendas. Our concern is that some of the really important working credits that families rely on, like the child tax credit and the EITC, will be under threat during any type of tax policy reform. So I hate to start off with this. There's not much good news that we're hearing right now. Hopefully we will be able to identify some progressive work, but right now we're really partnering with our national partners to think through how we defend these. Jody's going to talk a little bit about consumer protection in Illinois, and I think some of the story collection we want to do for our Illinois campaigns will also help with our campaign to protect the CFPB. But I would, for federal policy pieces for now, I would just say please keep your eye open for actions and for requests for stories. So now I'm going to turn it over to Sam Tuttle, who's our Director of Policy at Heartland Alliance, who's going to provide us with an update on the state budget, which I think just hearing a little bit about the state budget will just help inform kind of the environment that we're stepping into in trying to pass some of our state legislative priorities. So Sam, do you want to take it away?
Yeah. Oh, look at that picture of me. So much thinner. Thanks so much, Lucy. I think I'm adding a whole bunch of additional less exciting information to add on top of the federal policy update. Illinois is taking the record for the longest period of time since World War II without a budget. We are now 18 months without a state budget. The result is that the state is essentially operating by court order, and we have had a couple of temporary budget's the wrong word, appropriations that have allowed the state to kind of move along slowly and cumbersomely while creating a fair amount of devastation. And when I say devastation, I do mean about more than 1 million people have lost human service. We've had a number of organizations close, and we continue to have a situation when many vendors simply aren't getting paid because they don't have the legal authority to be paid, and we have a $9 to $10 billion budget deficit. In June, the General Assembly did pass a temporary appropriation. That appropriation covered all of FY16 and 6 months of FY17, but only appropriated maybe 65% of what was needed for human service. At the same time, they did pass an appropriation that allows federal funds and a technical term, other state funds to flow through FY17. But if you noticed, December 31st was the expiration of that temporary appropriation, which means at this point, the comptroller doesn't have legal authority to pay on many of its bills, including for human service providers. And until we have some other spending authority, an appropriations bill, the comptroller simply can't cut that check absent a court order. And that's what we've seen other places. Medicaid payments, state employees, they're all being paid because people marched into court and got an order that they be paid. What we have heard recently, and it's heartening to see a bipartisan effort to create some sort of movement, are the leaders in the Senate, Leader Radonio and President Cullerton, working together to come up with a package of 11 bills that includes revenue, so increases in the income tax, and I believe on sugary sweetened beverages, and changes to other policy issues that both the governor and Democrats have been pushing. So it increases it includes a minimum wage proposal, workers' compensation, and other similar issues to try to put together a grand bargain of sorts. We're likely to see many of those bills moving in the General Assembly next week, but what we're hearing is that they may not necessarily lead to a budget. There's a lot of politics between the governor, the speaker, and the Senate, and at this point, it would be, I think, ill-advised for any of us to count on that leading to a resolution of the budget in the next 6 months. So for the purposes of our policy work, that means that we have to kind of approach our work in Springfield knowing that this budget battle will likely be continuing all the way through to the end, if not further, and that legislators really are tired and they're frustrated, and that affects kind of where they are in their lawmaking. It also means that many of the programs and services that the people that Heartland Alliance serves and that many of us work with and many of us ourselves rely upon continue to be at risk and that will affect kind of the resources available to all of us in the community. And I'm happy to take any questions at the end on that.
Great, thank you so much, Pam. So with that, we are going to move into our state legislative agenda, which hopefully will be a little bit more uplifting. And, you know, certainly we're hoping to, as a counter to what's happening federally, really, we do believe that states continue to be a place where we can be more innovative and we can see some progress. So I want to first talk a little bit before I pass it on to Jody about our Children's Savings Accounts campaign. As many of you guys know, really since IABG began, CSAs have been on our radar, and really this is the fight to ensure that every child has access to a savings account that can build and grow and be applied to their future and help build a more financially secure future. We know that a child or a low, moderate income child that has even just $500 in an account is 3 times more likely to enroll in college and 4 times more likely to complete college compared to their peers that do not have an account. We know that the aspirational impact of a CSA and the impact that it has on creating this college-going mentality is really, really important. In addition to, you know, the financial impacts of a CSA, early research pilots have showed us that they also have an impact on parents. So a mother's expectation for their child's education and their child's future improves. We also see that from a very early age, the child's early social emotional development improves by having the account, and this is regardless of whether the parent has even saved into the account. So in many cases, a city or a state is automatically opening up an account and seeding that account, and just having that account and knowing that it's there has an impact. And we're also seeing that the savings account reduces maternal depression symptoms. What's exciting is that the CSA movement has really expanded nationally, and we're seeing more and more states. Most recently, states in the New England area passed CSA policy, or administratively, their treasurers have launched CSA programs. So we believe that it's time to advance CSAs in Illinois. We are really grateful for our CSA working group, which is made up of IABG partners around the state that, especially over the last 2 years, have committed to engaging the state treasurer in conversations about how do we make a savings account for every child a reality in Illinois. We're really excited to share that we plan to introduce CSA legislation this session. We have been recommending in the legislation that we're currently drafting. It's still taking shape. We're still having conversations with the treasurer's office as far as what would actually be feasible. And so over the next 2 weeks, it's certainly going to undergo some changes, and we're going to and so we'll certainly have some more specifics for you. There's always last-minute decisions that are made. So I'm not going to go right now. I'm happy to answer questions in the Q&A. I'm not going to go into real specifics. But we hope that the CSA legislation that we'll be introducing will include many of the features that you see on the screen. But we're really hoping to put in place a program that will be able to expand and scale into a universal program where an account is automatically open for every child in Illinois with an initial seed and a match savings incentive for lower income families, and really tie it to some of the existing structures that we have across the state, schools, early learning communities, tax prep sites, and trying to think creatively about that. So we will have more specific actions for you. When we follow up on the webinar, we will include a link where your organization can sign on in support of the campaign, and we can add you to the fact sheet that we'll be sharing with legislators. We also have a request for stories. We do want to hear from parents that have struggled to save for college, or folks who, lacking a savings account, have really struggled to pay for college. We do have a specific campaign website, brighterfuturesil.org, where you'll be able to go and get some more specific information and updates as the campaign goes on. And again, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be finalizing legislation, so the details will really be firmed up. But for now, I'm going to leave it at that. We're really excited about this campaign. We think Illinois is ready. We're excited about the partnership with the State Treasurer's Office, and really grateful for all the feedback from the working group. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jody Blaylock. Jody and I work closely at Heartland Alliance, leading the Financial Empowerment Policy Project and coordinating IABG. Jody has really taken a leadership position on a number of our consumer protection campaigns. Our consumer protection work, thanks to, again, our partners, has really expanded over the last couple of years, and so we certainly have a robust agenda. And I'm going to pass it off to Jody to share more about that agenda.
I just realized I was on mute. Sorry about that. Thanks, Lucy. I'm really excited to share about some of our efforts this year on the legislative front related to consumer protections. As Lucy mentioned, consumer protections is an area that we've really been beefing up our knowledge and work in. And that's partly because we've really been hearing from a lot of you and many partners who are part of IABG that this continues to be an issue, that predatory lending, issues related to debt collection, sort of across a number of different products and services, that consumer protections is still an area where we have a lot of work to do, especially if we really want to close the racial wealth divide. So the words here that you see actually represent some of the conversations we had back at the convening in October around consumer protections, really lifting up a lot of the issues and challenges that you were seeing on the ground. And you can see that loans is one of the biggest issues that came up again and again, as well as car insurance, you can see sticking out there, which we'll talk about in a minute, as well as debt. So we have initiatives and plans in the work for all of these, actually, which is really exciting to report. So excited to sort of dive into some of these more specific efforts. So the first thing I want to mention is a predatory lending campaign. So we heard loud and clear from all of you that payday lending and auto title lending continues to be a major, major challenge for folks, that the regulations are not strong enough, that people's lives are still being really, really affected deeply by these products. And so, you know, as Lucy mentioned, on the federal level, we have a lot of concerns about the CFPB, and one of the pieces of that is the CFPB rule on payday and auto title lending. You know, we did a lot of work on that this past year, and I think we have a lot of concerns about how that rule is going to end up, how it will be finalized or not, or possibly overturned. And so in light of the threats, the really significant threats on the federal level, we see state level as a very key place of change and opportunity to really put forward both a counter narrative to what's going on at the federal level, but also really substantive regulation that that protects consumers in Illinois. So right now we are working on developing a much broader, larger campaign on predatory lending. I can't tell you much about how it will shape up right now. I think we're still wanting to hear from a lot of you and having conversations with a lot of partners about what this could look like. But we recognize that this is a really important fight that we need to start taking on. And so and now is sort of a good opportunity for that in light of what's going on at the federal level. So we are working on sort of developing something. And so for now, what we ask is, one, that you would just stay tuned, that you would really stay keyed in, that you would pay attention to our updates so that you know sort of when something happens that you're able to sign on in support of this campaign and take action. We're going to need a lot of support from all of you. One of the pieces of that is stories. So we know no matter what the specifics of this campaign will be, we know that we're going to need a lot of stories about how people's lives are impacted by payday and title loans specifically. So I'll go into this more at the end, but we're really going to be doing a big push for stories. So if you can be keeping that in your mind as you go about your work, we'd really appreciate that. So some other more specific bills that are coming up. One is around debt collection. So if you might remember that a couple of years ago we introduced a pretty broad bill on debt collection reforms, and we passed actually a piece of that last year with our wage assignment bill. So this year we're taking a smaller piece of that fight on, and so this bill would protect 529 college savings accounts as well as ABLE accounts from debt collection attempts. That's pretty much all it does. It's really simple, but would protect the savings in those accounts, which we think are accounts that should be sort of protected during the debt collection process. Another bill that we'll be a couple of bills we'll be working on are related to fines and fees. So this is an issue that we have seen coming up in a number of areas, in lots of conversations with you and many of our partners, and in lots of different spaces, the issue of fines and fees, and the burden of the amount of fines and fees, as well as sort of the subsequent debt collection that often happens when fines and fees start to rack up. We've been hearing that this is a pretty significant issue in a lot of different areas, in utilities and parking tickets, things like that. So a couple of bills that we'll be supporting are sort of listed here. So the first one is a bill that we're working on with the Chicago Jobs Council that would prohibit driver's license suspension for all non-moving violations. So basically, you can only have your license suspensions for issues actually related to your ability to drive safely. There are a lot of reasons why you could have your license suspended right now, including unpaid parking tickets, issues related to ability to repay, and we really feel like driver's license suspension is not the right tool to be using to collect on those types of debts. So we'll be working with the Chicago Jobs Council on that. Another bill that sounds like is going to be out there this year related to fines and fees is a bill that would streamline and reduce fines and fees in the court system. Right now, it's a pretty Byzantine and complicated system, and there is a report out there on this that you could look at. But there's a group of folks that are leading the way on this, and so it's something that we'll be supporting. Another issue we'll be supporting is on something called arbitration, which, if you're not familiar, is a way that disputes are settled out of court. So the CFPB has a rule on arbitration, which we supported, and this is a perfect example of states leading the way after all the threats at the federal level. So Senator Biss is planning on introducing a bill about arbitration that takes pieces of the CFPB rule and puts it into Illinois statute. So it would basically prevent a company from requiring arbitration as a condition for buying a certain product or service. So we'll be supporting that bill as well. And finally, the last specific bill I'll mention, and as we said, we've got a lot of bills sort of floating out there right now, but the last bill I'll mention is one on car insurance rates. This is a bill actually that was introduced last year by Senator Collins that we supported, and after hearing from all of you over the past year, we sort of, in response, thought it was really important that we do a little bit more work on this. So we'll be working to support this bill this year. It's a bill that prohibits the use of credit information when determining car insurance rates. We'll actually be working, we're trying to actually expand the bill to include some other factors, socioeconomic factors as well, to make sure that those can't be used sort of in the place of credit information to discriminate on car insurance rates. But for now, the way the bill is written is pretty narrowly to credit information. We're hoping that bill will expand. But either way, we plan on sort of supporting this bill and monitoring it throughout the session. The last piece that I'll mention that's not a specific bill is just our defensive work. As usual, we plan to play defense. We'll be monitoring for any type of effort by the industry to roll back any existing consumer protections on a number of different products and services, including payday loans, title loans, as well as any products related to car financing. That's an issue that came up last year, debt collection. So we'll be monitoring for all of that and playing defense as needed on any existing consumer protections to make sure we don't lose what we already have. So ways that you can get involved. There are a couple that I'll mention. We really want to be encouraging people to share stories. This is something we've talked about a lot, but I think we're at a place where we're needing to really promote a strong narrative around consumer protections and the importance of it. So I think we're going to really be putting a lot of effort into collecting stories right now. So we're looking for folks to share their stories who have been impacted by any of the things that you see up here. We're looking, we'll be doing a lot of work, as Lucy sort of mentioned earlier, to protect the CFPB. So if you know anyone who has been positively impacted by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, if you know someone who's reported a complaint that was then resolved, we really want to be sharing those stories to talk about why the CFPB is so important, as well as all the pieces that I mentioned sort of throughout this section. So stories on predatory loans and the impact on someone's life, driver's license suspension, high car insurance rates. There's also another issue that I didn't quite touch on, but we're also looking for stories. This is a little bit more of an urgent request, looking for stories for folks who may struggle to pay their gas bill. Illinois PIRG is leading the effort on some issues related to people's gas that would significantly raise the gas rate, and that would disproportionately affect low-income folks. So we're really looking for folks who would be willing to publicly speak about their experiences with high gas bills. So these are a bunch of issues that we're trying to get a lot of input on. There's also a survey for the driver's license suspension, sort of an easy way to share your experiences that way for that particular issue. So we'll include that, as well as a full list of the stories that we're looking for. We'll include all that in the follow-up materials from the webinar. The other way you can take action on these issues is to sign on in support of some of these bills on our website. So when we send the follow-up information, there will be a link to a place on our website where you can sign up for the specific bills that you want to stay updated on and to support. So that would give us permission to say that you support this bill, but also is a way for you to get updates throughout the legislative session on those issues. So we'll be sending that out, so keep an eye out for that. The last thing I just want to mention is a reminder that while making sure we have strong regulations in statute is really important, another important piece of consumer protections is enforcement of those laws. And so one way that we can support the enforcement of the consumer protections that we do have is by reporting any complaints about different products and services to the CFPB as well as the Illinois Attorney General's office. So really on almost any issue, especially payday loans, title loans, paid tax preparation, debt collection, any of the issues that would come to mind as something that's predatory, those are things that you can report really both to the CFPB and the AG's office, and those links are up on the screen. So just a reminder that those are resources for you and also helps with enforcement of these of consumer protections. So with that, I will turn it back to Lucy.
Great, thank you so much, Jody. So I know we threw a lot at you guys there. Again, we will share all of this post-webinar, which will include, again, links that you'll be able to easily go and learn more about the campaigns and sign on, as well as an easy one-pager about the stories we need, so you can share it with fellow caseworkers or your partners that you think might have relevant stories. So we are going to start the Q&A now. So there's a couple of ways that you can ask a question. Feel free to type it into the chat box. You can also, under the attendees section on the GoToWebinar control panel, you can raise your hand. So I see that we have a couple hands raised. So in doing that, I will unmute you and you can ask your question. So I see Dory Rand has a question. So Dory, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can ask. So Dory, you're unmuted now if you want to go ahead. Dory, are you still there? Okay, I am going to go to the next person, but Dory, let me know if you still have your question via chat. David Marcel, you have your hand raised, so I will move over to you. Do you have a question or comment?
And can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't using the chat box the right way. I meant to actually send you guys a note. I guess I'm just curious, given all of these issues, it would be interesting to figure out from a timing perspective of what we need to focus on when the most, knowing that the federal lay of the land is pretty questionable right now, but just given limited energy, and maybe we can't decide on this call, but in a subsequent one. And a follow-up to that just is, it would be good to know, because we certainly have a sense on the issues around funding for tax for VITA, but who should we be focusing on in terms of members of the Illinois delegation for federal issues? So those are kind of two parallel questions.
Sure. So related to the your second question with the Illinois delegation, I can share a list of kind of target members that are on some of the relevant committees as part of the follow-up. It's not something I have in front of me right now, but that's something that we're happy to share with when it comes to some of the specifics. So for the VITA grants, there's certainly some key members that from the Illinois delegation. So that's something we can share, David, and I appreciate you bringing that up. In terms of timing for some of our state policy, I think it's a really good question, but one that's really tough to answer until we begin session. I think what we're hoping is that we can identify which partners are interested in which issues. Some of the issues we're leading on that we mentioned today, like CSAs and the debt collection. Others we are supporting, like arbitration, we're supporting, and there's other community partners that are leading on. So I think for now, our hope is that we can identify which partners are interested so that we can turn to them when we need support and keep them updated. It's just hard to measure what will move and what will until things are filed and opposition begins to kind of come out of the woodwork. So as we get a better sense of things, we can continue to update you guys. Sam and Jody, if you have any other thoughts, but my understanding it's a little hard to tell kind of on timing.
Yeah, I would just add, I do think that with all the other kind of crisis action happening at the state level with the budget, we've been surprised in the past couple of years about what sticks and what doesn't. And so in some ways, I think some of our best efforts to be kind of predictive and planful have sometimes gone awry, and where we didn't think we'd get much traction, we got a ton. And so I just kind of, I think with the context at the General Assembly, it's really hard to be a good predictor of what goes and what doesn't.
So I am going to just check, does anyone have any other questions? I don't see any more hands raised. Just going to wait a couple beats. Okay, so certainly there's a few more things I want to touch on. So if you think of something, feel free to raise your hand. I'll keep an eye on it. But oh gosh, let me get back to the final slides. So just to recap kind of on actions, there's obviously a lot of specific consumer protection campaigns where we're looking for pretty specific types of stories. You know, somebody's driver's license was revoked. Somebody had abusive payday loan issue that was resolved by the CFPB, and so forth. So we will be sending out a one-pager with a list of the types of stories, very specific of what we're looking for. Second, we will really encourage you to go on the website and sign up for the specific campaign and sign on and support for the specific campaigns so that we can target you more with information on those as they move forward. And finally, Jody and I are always here to answer questions, provide support. As the campaigns move forward and we see kind of what's moving, what's gaining traction, there will be more specific actions. We'll be asking you, to make your voice heard during when something comes up in committee by slipping online in support, which is something we'll provide more instructions on. We'll be, there may be a really compelling story where we will need a program participant to testify. There may be calls to legislators, and certainly with the federal actions, we've already seen that people making their voices heard, people calling their legislators, their Congress members, does make a difference. And so we'll be sharing those actions and hoping that you guys engage, and we'll be trying to provide a variety of ways to take action, knowing that your capacity is limited and that you guys are doing a lot of work already. But we really do appreciate your support and are excited about the work ahead. Finally, we have a lot of IABG members currently on our listserv. which allows you to share activities, workshops that are coming out, your tax prep sites and hours. We often post funding opportunities when they become available on there. So I encourage, if you're not on the listserv, to join. We'll be sending out the specific link to do that in the follow-up. But it's a great way to share with your peers about this work. And I think the closer our network can become, I think just the stronger our work altogether. So with that, you'll see Jody and my contact information. We're always available to answer questions. You can also check out our website for additional information. But again, we're really looking forward to working with all of you over the legislative session, and want to thank you for all the thoughtful feedback that you've already provided on the agenda and your help in creating it. So with that, thank you, and we will follow up with a lot more information. So thanks.